Okay, so hello, my name is Marlena. I'm from University of Silesia in Poland. I'm mostly a legal theorist, not a philosopher, but I try to be familiar with the concepts. And I'm at the beginning of my new project about the disability and romantic relationships. I wrote a PhD about the close relationships, and this topic came out from this one. So as I said, I'm at the beginning, and I just present my first intuitions, and my project now is strictly descriptive in many ways. So the structure of my presentation is that first I conceptualize the problem. You see, you can write and read, and the aim is to analyze the status of romantic relationships among people with intellectual and developmental disabilities through the lens of the relational autonomy. And the most of the inspiration that came to me that the legal framework, legal discourse about the intellectually disabled people is not in the satisfactory state, and is quite strongly dogmatic, and really rarely is interpreted through the prism of the autonomy, agency, and yeah. So I understand intellectual and developmental disability. Of course, there's a really broad descriptor here, but which include many of the cognitive impairments, learning disabilities and difficulties, autism, cognitive impairments, etc. But I'm mostly concentrated on the people with who require more intensive support, who a dependency is the one of the inseparable part of their lives. And I assume a social model of disability. So. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I know. I speak quickly. So I assume a social model of disability. So I assume that individual is disabled mostly by the society and their understandings, which are existing in the legal and social discourse. So the problem which I identify is that, of course, at first I have to mention that I started from my national point that is a Polish legislation and Polish context, but I also made some first comparative analysis, and I researched some of the special pedagogy and sociology studies, empirical studies in which people with disabilities and their carers were asked how they understand relationships, autonomy in relationships, how they perceive themselves in the relationships. So that is the first part. And as I said, the Polish context is main nowadays for me, but I hope it will be developing in my study. So in Poland, we have almost 5.4 million people with disabilities, but we don't know how many of them are people with intellectual disability, and we don't know even if these people participated in the census. So we don't have really knowledge about the group, about the amount of the people that is can be covered by this name. So, but the fact from the empirical studies is that these people form romantic relationships. Some of them are recognized. They are married, for example, and in the contemporary research is said that people with intellectual disabilities have the same needs in the case of the affiliation, belonging, but for the many years it was said that they have no needs to be in the relationships, to have a family, etc. So I saw that people with intellectual disabilities, not only in the Polish context, but they experience significant limitations in the ability to realize themselves in the relationships. And the first is the legal limitation, and the strongest one, in my opinion, are the informal ones. And my thesis is also that even if the legislation is progressive, the status of the person with disability, with the intellectual disability, is not really changing. because their lives are really strictly rooted in the environment and surrounding. So I saw that the people with IDD encounter problems with establishing relationships and their legal recognition. And when the relationship is not legally recognized, it's only de facto relationship and has lower legal protection. But in many of the cases, people with this kind of disabilities cannot really establish relationships, so they suffer for the chronic loneliness. And the other thing is that there is a lack of knowledge among families, professionals about how to support people with disabilities in their sexuality, in how to behave in the close relationships. And also the social rehabilitation system is for the person, not for the relationship. So it totally ignores the relational aspects of their life. And I saw that, well, okay, if you look at the legal discourse, you can see that the dominance of the individualistic approach to autonomy. So the intellectually disabled people are mostly seen as not competent, dependent, so they are not autonomous. So they cannot do some things, or they need to have some support in doing many personal decisions. So this individualistic approach is based on the abilities and competencies, and we are investigating the rationality of the person, her possibility to determine who this person wants to be in his life. So, but of course, in many of the approaches, autonomous functioning requires entering into relationships, but the relationships are not the core part of the autonomy. So the person is lonely, I would say, independent. And I found attractive in this context relational approaches to autonomy. So starting from Jennifer Nadolski, and she said that if we ask actually what enables people to be autonomous, the answer is not in isolation, but the work that they are making through their relationships, that we are discovering that we are autonomous because we are in the relationships. And also the relationship in which we are in the social context, in the context of our close relationship, constitute our possibilities to be autonomous. So the formation of the individual desires, beliefs, and our attitudes is strongly influenced in this approach to social norms, institutions, practices, and relationship. So I would say in this context, the challenge is to create an environment that promotes the perception of the individual as autonomous. So we are mostly thinking about how we perceive a person, not really that it has some essential traits, but how we treat this person and how we can help this person behave or gain some goals to be autonomous in our social understanding. Yeah? So in this context, autonomy is externally derived and it's strongly dependent on the environment. And I found interesting approach of Katarina Mackenzie, strongly, really, I think, famous in the feminist discourse. And Mackenzie says that the autonomy is multidimensional concept It's built on the three axes: self-determination, self-governance, and self-authorization. And I felt, well, okay, I think I have to investigate how these components are working in the social context. And I thought, well, we have person, we have relationships, and we have environment. So I have to imagine how this axis of autonomy, like a self-determination, so the right to decide what I want to be in life, how I want to navigate my life, self-governance, understood like having a competence to make authentic decision, which is coherent with my identity, and the really important in the case of intellectually disabled people component is self-authorization, which means self-respect, self-confidence, and self-esteem, that I believe to myself that I made right decision and I believe strongly in it. And it's also in McKinsey research is strongly said that the persistent messages of inferiority and invisibility can be internalized as a shame, humiliation, invisibility. So oppression, so the oppressive relationships are not the source of the autonomy, and they can really destroy the feeling that the person can achieve something. And this is, and I thought that I don't want to really make only a theory, the theory, and I projected empirical research, and I will be making interviews with the carers and the intellectually disabled people to navigate these three elements in their perception of the relationships. But now I will come from my preliminary, So I distincted a person, relationship, environment triada, I would say, and I start from the factors that shape autonomy of the person, then comes to the relationship, and then environment. What factors are influencing autonomy in this respect? How much time was I? 9 minutes, okay. So starting from the person, the typical biography of the intellectually disabled person is assumed that this person has no future, so the legal regulations are not really projected through the prism that this person is only a child, not an adult with a complete life. Also, this person is treated like a natural object of pity, unhappy, vulnerable, lonely, or on the other hand, in many of the legal writings, like dangerous, irrational beings that we have to protect society from these persons. Yeah. Also, in many of the legal readings, especially in the family law, it's said that there are eternal child, so they are not really responsible, they do not understand what responsibility means, and they do not reach adulthood in the formal sense, even if they have it in the formal sense. And in many studies is said a lack of the competence, so the person with intellectual disabilities, many of them, are living only in two places, in home and the institutions, and they do not have really many opportunities to develop their traits, to how to behave in the social life, how to be in the relationships, because they are said they just cannot do something, that this is not for them. So they just don't know how to, you know, the ABC of the relationships. And also is what is really disturbing, the disability spread, that the person is seen only through the prism of the disability, and this disability means that it strongly influences all of the aspects and attributes of the person intellectually and in the case of attractiveness, etc. And it comes to it, in some of the studies is said that the person with disability are having internalized stigmas, so they understand the obstacles and the set and the discourse that it builds around them, and they appear to understand that they are not capable of being in the relationships, that they cannot just try to be in the legally recognized relationship. So I find it really hard for this person to develop a self-concept because they don't have environment for that, to experience themselves as they are, because they are treated in the labels, and we can see some kind of looping effect that they are starting to believe that they are like the people say and the legal discourse, etc. So developing self-concept, it's really important in the sense of the being autonomous, yes? So it builds a critical reflection and gives you a motivation for action, just give you understanding who you are. And it's really interesting, of course, it's just a note that last year was made a big study by Smith, and many of the intellectually disabled people even cannot discover that they are not non-heterosexual, that they are only put in the frame of being heterosexual. So they cannot being in the different relationship than heterosexual in the institution, because the institution puts the borders of how they can be in the relationship. So coming to the relationship, convention of the people with disability rights said that this person have a right to be in the recognition, in the recognized relationship. But when I came to the different approaches in the European legislation of the possibility of entering to these relationships, it comes to me that it's not really exercised. And coming to the Podgórecki, a really famous Polish sociologist of law, he said it's a flaw human rights, because they do not really, they have a lot of promises in law, but they cannot exercise it. For example, in Poland it's like that we have ban, but you can come to the court and court is evaluating that you can have marriage only if you are not threat to the future children and you understand what does it mean to be in a relationship. And when I came to some of the proceedings, the people are asked, do you know how to procreate? Do you ever have sex? How many children you want to have, etc., etc. So really questions out of the scope what it's really about, yeah. In some of the legislations are the possibility not really possible to enter a marriage. For example, in German legislation it's like that if you are incapable of contract, you cannot marry. So if you are incapacitated, you cannot just marry. But I know for the practice that it's really hard to be incapacitated in Germany, but of course it's a strong limitation. I found interesting a model in the English countries where it's supporting a decision model, where a person is supported in making a decision about marriage, not about the whole life, but only this one decision about the marriage. Yeah. So I think that the relationships of the people with disabilities are not really the main interest of the legal discourse, but they put a lot of questions. Yeah, and I see the politics of avoidance, don't ask, don't tell policy. It's a kind of invisible relationships. And it's also what is interesting, that the people, when they establish already relationships, they do not have any space for meeting. They only can meet in the institution. And what is really important, how I catch from the empirical studies, how they reflect their relationships. And I assume that it seems that it's showing really strongly self-reflection and authenticity of this, what they are saying, how they understand being in a relationship, to take care of each other, to go hand in hand together all the time. But they really understand the barriers that are made for them, yeah. I don't know if you understand me. It is the law and disabled people are simply not allowed to do so. It is no legal at the moment possibilities. So they understand that they cannot be in a relationship, even if with the adequate support they can just go to the court and try to do it. Yes, so they internalize that they just cannot do it. I really like this part of the interview because of it strongly shows the confusion, uncertainty, that they cannot decide anything in their life and plan anything, even if they really understand what the marriage is about and the relationship. And many of the relationships in the institutions are lasting for the 20, 12 years. I have the three pairs of the people that was in the long-term relationship, but this relationship is treated by the therapist as a, like a play, not something serious. And that's the really important thing, that the environment, it's not perceiving people with disabilities as autonomous. Yes. And I call it a legal blind seeing, so we look at the relationship that they are, but we are not reflecting a solution. Okay, go for that. And what is really important in the environment, which is perceiving people with disabilities through the prism of the pity, of the lack of the recognition, it's a lack of the advocacy, because relationships between people with intellectual disability exist locally in the institution, not really in the system. Yeah, they are passive. They cannot emancipate themselves in the institution. Lack of the resistance comes to the lack of advocacy. So they cannot just express what they really want to do in their lives. Yeah? And the last thing I'm finishing, the chaperone's dilemma, the role of the carers and the family, I think the most crucial in the context. So formal approval, informal one, is much more important, that the people with disabilities are treated like they cannot be authors of their lives. They just are passive observers of their lives. And when the carers, parents, and family see that this person is developing into relationships, sexuality, are trying to attach it to some negative emotions, not do that, yeah, fear and guilt. And this also what is really this carer perspective, yeah, is a part of the interviews. When you are an adult, you have to ask your parents. I think it's they can't be left alone. It can get out of control. So I think that the colonial perspective can be useful there, but I don't have time. And they are saying that your relationship's my problem. So it's better for the carers and the family, not not the person with disability, to be in a relationship, to develop, but they also in the sense they are not treated really seriously, their decision in this sense. So what is also really alarming, the my body, not my decisions, is that in the court proceedings, family has the strongest voice. The person with the disability don't have. And it's also the matter of the forced sterilization and contraception and abortion. Yeah? Sometimes some of the people just don't know if they have abortion, for example. So they are not asked in some of the, even if the legal regulations are like, you need to ask a person, practically is not the case. So the staff, the family, the carers, of course, they have a good intention. They try their best. But at the end of the day, they treating people with the disability not like autonomous, not like a person with rights. So they are treating them with the childish voice, addresses in the first and the third person, etc. So I assume that to just sum up in a sentence. I assume that the important is that the environment have to perceive person as autonomous, and the social practices are the most important there. By perceiving person as autonomous, we support in their choices and treat with respect. So it's really important to give support, advocacy, and enable of autonomy, not concentrate on the traits of the person, that somebody does not have something. And the relationship is the main expression of our will, of our autonomy. So if person with disability builds this kind of relationship, we have to take a really serious part of it. Yeah? So autonomy is, in my understanding, is a matter of exercise, not permanent achievement, that we need to have surrounding to support that we are autonomous. So thank you very much, and sorry for being too long. Yeah.